This is a whole video on the functional divisions of the nervous system, which probably tells you that there's quite a bit of information on these divisions. This is going to be kind of a broad overview, and what this means is going to be kind of a lot of information. It's kind of ways of categorizing the nervous system, and we're going to be using these categories throughout quite a bit of the rest of the semester. For example, I'll mention the autonomic nervous system today as one of the subdivisions. We have a whole chapter on the autonomic nervous system coming up. So part of this, if it doesn't all completely make sense, we'll come back to each of these. I'll try to remind you where we are as we go through the divisions more in detail in the future. So let's get started for now, though, on an overview of these functional divisions. So the first way to categorize, or divide up the nervous system is the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is the center, right? So this center part, both the brain and the spinal cord, versus peripheral is in the periphery, so the outside. This is going to be the nerves and the ganglia associated with those nerves. Let's go ahead and look at this. This kind of tan color right here is the central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. There are neurons, so the cell bodies, various places throughout this, as well as the axons that then talk to other neurons. Some of these might be really long and traveled on the whole way here. A lot of variability with size and shape that we'll come back to. The reason I want to point this out is because what's a little more confusing for students is the cranial nerves and ganglia. So cranial nerves and spinal nerves are both types of nerves, which, unlike neurons, are bundles of axons. So this little bundle right here is many, many, many axons all bundled together, and that's what makes it called a nerve, not a neuron. It's different things. So a lot of the peripheral nervous system is nerves, these cranial nerves that come from the brain, and these spinal nerves that are associated with oftentimes there's a cell body in the central nervous system associated with these nerves. The exception to that is the ganglia. The ganglia are collections of cell bodies that are in the periphery. So neuron cell bodies. So in this little ganglia right here, you'd have a little neuron cell body, more than one. I can really only fit one here, but try to draw another one so you can get the idea that in this ganglia, let's draw it like this. There's a ganglia. There's a bunch of cell bodies, meaning the location, the part of the neuron that has the nucleus, for example. And then the axons and dendrites, the other parts of the neuron we'll come back to, come off of that. So basic terminology, maybe this will make more sense as well after you've seen the anatomy of a neuron. But just kind of for now, memorizing these definitions, cranial nerves are nerves are bundles of axons. Ganglia are collections of neuron cell bodies. Neurons are this primary cell of the nervous system. Primary as in the one we'll talk about the most. We'll have a whole lecture on cells of the nervous system coming up. So that's one way of categorizing the nervous system. Before we jump into further categorization, I want to take kind of a side step here and have you try to make sense of what we need to consider with the nervous system, what kind of other divisions we need to talk about. So what I'd like you to do here is try to diagram in your own notes how a painful stimulus can cause a response. There's 5 boxes here that should look a little familiar. 5. These are going to be the same 5 components as your feedback loops you've been drawing, but instead of feeding back, it's going to just be a stimulus response. So how does a painful stimulus cause a response? If you need a hint, here are those 5 components. So try to fill these in response to a painful stimulus. So let's look at this. Here are the components. So a painful stimulus, whether that's a sharp object or something hot, And then this is going to target a receptor. Receptors or sensors could be a thermoreceptor, a nociceptor is the name for a pain receptor. It's going to carry this, it's going to detect this, and a neuron is going to carry this information to the central nervous system. The integrator is the central nervous system. So first of all, this input signal here is going to be important. Then we've got an output signal as well. The central nervous system is going to communicate with muscles. This is the output signal, and then the target or effector is muscles that are going to withdraw and move the hand away from the stimulus. So poke something and withdraw. The hand moving is the response. So this should look familiar from your feedback loops. The difference here is this response, once it happens, it turns off, but it's not a negative feedback loop. You still have those same components. So we're going to kind of use that with a little bit more detail to look at the functional divisions. So what I want to do here is actually draw out for you some of these divisions. I'm going to try to draw just freestyle here. So we already know we've got the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And then we know the divisions of the central nervous system are going to be the brain and what? Spinal cord. And then the peripheral nervous system, we're going to get a bit more complicated. We're going to divide that into a sensory division and a motor division. So on the previous slide, that input signal telling your body about the painful stimulus, that was your sensory division, right? Sensory information coming in. Something's hot, something's cold, something's painful, something's pleasant. Sensory division. We've also got a motor division. That was that output signal that told the muscles to respond, told the muscles to move. So that's the basics, but there's further divisions. So the sensory division can be divided into visceral and somatic. What this means is the visceral is basically your viscera, so inside stuff. This is also called kind of your autonomic, so an autonomic reflex, such as the eye blink reflex. We'll get into some other examples. These are things that are going to happen kind of automatically. And then we've got somatic. So these are the things you typically become aware of. Somatic senses are things like touch that you are more external and you're more aware of and then consciously can respond to. And we'll get into sensory systems as a separate topic later. Then for the motor division, we've got the same too, actually. I don't know if I'll have room here, but this one down here, we've got the visceral. Visceral is the same thing as autonomic. I'll put visceral, I meant to do that. Visceral, and then somatic. So this is visceral sensory over here. This is visceral motor. What that means is a response, so an autonomic response versus a motor response that is more deliberate. This is going to be skeletal muscles, something that is conscious and deliberate. The visceral division then, that's your autonomic division, the autonomic nervous system. This is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. And so this is what, there's a whole chapter on the autonomic nervous system later on. So this diagram is kind of ugly. This is figure 12.02 in your book if you want a nicer schematic of the same thing. So let's put this information together with what we just did, that stimulus response pathway. So here is a different diagram of a stimulus response, a little more complicated than what I showed you with that just painful stimulus, but the same idea. So let's break this down. We've got receptors here. So a stimulus is going to target the receptors. The receptors are going to detect the information and carry this is the input signal, this to the central nervous system. That's what this arrow is here, is going to the central nervous system. This is the input signal, but what that means here is now we've got some different names for it. This is the sensory division of the peripheral nervous system. This could be either a visceral sensory, if it was something that was kind of an autonomic response, or it could be somatic sensory, if it's something like that painful stimulus that you're touching, that would be a somatic sensory. Afferent means going to the central nervous system. That's another key term. The information comes in to the central nervous system. This is our integrator. There are interneurons here that might communicate with each other along the way. Also make yourself conscious of this. And then we've got output. So this is our motor division. Efferent is exiting. And this is going to divide into two different pathways. So either somatic nervous system or autonomic nervous system. Just like the other diagram I just drew for you, I broke up motor division into those two different possible subdivisions. The autonomic nervous system can be divided into parasympathetic and sympathetic. The autonomic responses are things like smooth muscles, cardiac muscle, and glands and fat that you can't control those consciously. So you can regulate your heart rate by exercising, maybe breathing, but you can't just make it start beating faster. You can't make your digestion, the smooth muscles, work any differently. You can't tell your glands to start secreting things, but you can. So somatic nervous system, these are those skeletal muscles that you can decide to move. That's the somatic division of the nervous system. So I believe I have, yes, these pieces pop up here. So stimulus, receptor, integrator, response. I think I'm missing there's the target effectors here. So the same pathway is here. The two that are going to be more important now than when we talked about the feedback loops are going to be our input signal and our output signal, because those are going to be more complicated and fun. Okay, so what we've done here so far is compare and contrast the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system with respect to structure and function. We've differentiated between the motor or efferent division and the sensory or afferent division. We compared and contrasted somatic motor and autonomic motor system divisions of the nervous system. This is one we did fairly briefly. We'll get more into detail in it when we talk about each of these separately, which we will do. Somatic motor is kind of our skeletal muscles, and then autonomic is lots of functions that are all in a different chapter. And lastly, describe the nervous system as a control system with the following components. So these are those components of the pathway, the 5 components, but also some other details, such as the output signal, efferent pathway, and the input signal, the afferent pathway.